The fact that she shot him 9 times tells you a lot. She wanted to make sure he was really dead.
Marcia Thompson exercised her legal right and her human right to defend her own life.
Verdict, not guilty. Deputy, stop it! Stop it!
Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Right now, we're shining the spotlight on a former defendant who's trying to rebuild her life after she was found not guilty of murdering her husband. We watched the trial of Marcia Thompson play out live on Court TV. She shot and killed her husband, Terry, in 2019, following what she described as years of abuse. Marcia Thompson says she was living in a constant state of fear and pulled the trigger in self-defense. After a little more than 4 hours, a Florida jury returned a verdict in her favor. Here with me today, Marcia Thompson and her attorney, Jessica Mashali. It's wonderful to have you both here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Marcia, I want to start with you, please. First question, just how are you doing?
We're doing okay, doing better every day, adjusting, trying to take things slow.
It's hard, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
How are your kids? How are they doing?
They're doing okay. They're getting used to me being back at home full time. They still have a lot of healing to do. They've been in therapy from day one. I'm in therapy, so that's going to last probably for a long time.
And that's great. You all are in therapy. I wanted to ask you about the healing process and what it's like rebuilding and healing from all that trauma that you've all been through.
So for me, a big part of my life has been my faith in Jesus. I try to instill that in the kids because that's the only way I've been able to get through all the trauma of my life. The trial was also very difficult. And just kind of going day to day and having a reason to get up every day.
Right, right. Your faith, your faith. And I know that you've also found a friendship in this, a friendship in your attorney, Jessica Mashali, who I've said many times on this program did a masterful job representing you and putting forward that defense that was so complicated. Tell me first about the friendship. When did that come about?
I mean, from the moment we met, it felt like she could have been my friend from college. She's so loving, so caring, and she told me from day one she was going to fight for me, and she believed in me. So I couldn't have picked a better lawyer for help on the legal side, as well as the emotional side that I needed a lot of, support.
That is
and
true.
there was no one better than her.
I can't agree more. Jessica, I want to ask you about that defense you put together. This is not an easy defense to put forth. It's a complicated topic. A subset of post-traumatic stress disorder is battered spouse syndrome, and it's in the greater context of the affirmative defense, of self-defense. You managed to take such a complicated premise and make it understandable for the jury. How did you do that?
Well, like you said, it wasn't easy. Dr. Brannon was key. You all saw him testify, and having him was invaluable because not only does he have so much knowledge, as you could see from how he testified in court, he's so good at explaining it. And so part of his job was not just to evaluate Marcia and show up in court, but it was to teach me, right? So he spent time doing that. I also reached out to any resource I possibly could. I reached out to an amazing attorney named Dale Grayson with I think it's the National Office of Criminalized Survivors of Domestic Violence. And so it was a lot of time researching, understanding domestic violence in general and the battered spouse syndrome.
That was very evident. It all paid off. And as I was watching you, it was really clear that you felt for your client. You not only knew the law, you understood the issues, you knew that case like the back of your hand, you also were very empathetic to Marcia. That came through. I'm curious how you felt in the conversations that were private, that we didn't get to see before the jury.
So it's 5 years of conversations. Marcia's family hired me the day she was arrested. I was at her magistrate hearing the morning after her arrest. That's the first time we met each other. At that time, I knew very, very little. But I knew just from meeting her and seeing her and the police report that there was much more to the story that was evident. She really wasn't in a position to talk as much at that time. And so it was sort of over time getting to know each other. There were times where I would have to stop the meeting because it was overwhelmingly emotional. It was traumatic just to hear the things that she experienced, and we would have to take a break. And our meetings were typically several hours long at my office, and it was not easy to hear.
I'm sure it wasn't. And vicarious trauma is real trauma. You know, when you're living through the horrific things that your client Marcia went through, it takes a toll. It was, I'm sure, hard for the jury to hear some of these facts. And Marcia, I know they didn't even hear the half of it. We got our hands on an old arrest report with your husband. This is September 4th of 2011. And he had punched you in the face multiple times with a closed fist. You had multiple lacerations on your face, a big bump on your head, the officer noted. At this point in time, you were married 4 years and had one child at that point together. How vivid are the memories of what your husband did to you?
I mean, that incident in particular is difficult. I usually try not to remember a lot of stuff. But that one in particular, because my daughter was 1 year old at the time, and she was present, is very difficult.
You know, during your testimony, which was so emotional, and we were all taking it in and thinking about being in your shoes, one of the jurors commented about how it really swayed them thinking about the horrific things you went through. We've got a clip of that. Let's take a look at that together now.
He continued to yell at me. He was threatening me. He was saying, "You're going to call the police. I know it. Look at you. You have blood all over you. You look horrible." And I promised him I was not going to call the police.
Did you?
I did not. He threatened to slit my throat. He said, "I will kill you. You need to tell me the truth." I saw it with my own eyes, repeating the same threats that he had said earlier about me flirting with somebody else.
Now, in that clip we just took a look at, we know the jury felt like what you shared really, really impacted them greatly. What was it like sharing it, giving that testimony?
Extremely difficult. I didn't want to do it, but I felt I had to if I was going to fight for a chance to get back with my children.
With respect to Terry, I want to talk to you about your husband, Terry. Do you still miss him?
When I think about good times, yeah.
How about your kids? Do they still miss him?
That's, I probably shouldn't share what the kids, you know, their thoughts, but.
Understood.
They, sorry, thank you.
No, don't apologize, you're fine.
That's something they work on in therapy.
Yeah, sure, sure. It's such a difficult conflict to have, and thank you for being so open about this, because when we think about legally, you've done nothing wrong, right? You're free and clear from any legal issues here in criminal court. However, the death must still stay with you morally. Do you ever struggle with that? I know that you're a woman of faith. Do you ever have difficulty with that?
Very much, yeah. And that's also something I'm dealing with in therapy.
Sure, working through that, right?
Yeah.
To understand that you haven't done anything wrong.
Yes, and I've spent so many years blaming myself for so many things. It's just like one more thing to blame myself for. And all the consequences after that for me and my children.
That is the cycle of abuse, where you're made to blame yourself for things that aren't your fault. Jessica Mashali's been a defense attorney for many, many years. Jessica, isn't that, I mean, this is so typical of the cycle of abuse, where a batterer makes their victim feel like they're in the wrong.
Absolutely. That's a big part of the cycle of abuse, is that you are abused, physically abused. You're the victim. And then you're made to feel like it's your fault that it's happened. And then before you know it, you're getting an apology and you have the honeymoon phase and you're feeling like everything's gonna be okay. Until around the corner, there it goes again. You're being abused again. And that cycle just goes on. And the longer it goes on, the more stuck the victim is.
Exactly, exactly. And you mentioned the good times, Marcia. As Jessica noted, it's a cycle right after the really low lows. And we know that what happened to you was nothing short of horrific. You experienced physical violence, sexual violence, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. I mean, you name it, you experienced it and survived it all. You should be so proud of yourself for surviving that. And I can understand where the struggle comes, because certainly you never wanted to take his life. You never wanted to kill your husband. It just came to that. When you look back on it now, now having experienced the trial, all of it, how do you feel about that awful day?
I wish it never happened. I wish me and my kids would have been safe otherwise. So it's just something hard to have to deal with and accept.
When you think about that day, and I know that in your testimony, we watched it very carefully, you had a pretty big blackout too in the trauma that you went through there, and a lot of it was fuzzy, or you didn't quite remember from point A to point B. Is there anything that has come to you through therapy? I know sometimes, depending on the type of therapy work you do, sometimes you remember other details or anything. Did anything else come to you since the trial? No. I mean, it's been about 3 months since the verdict. I started therapy probably about a month after the verdict. So we're working up to it, you know, trying to take me slow. There's so much with me. I didn't know where they were going to begin, the therapist, because I just feel like there's just so much to tackle. Right. So far, no. Right. And there is so much to tackle. I mean, this was years of abuse. This didn't just happen in a vacuum. Marcia, in terms of trying to go back to a normal life, this has got to be really hard too. Wanted to ask you about that. So starting with work, are you working now again?
Not right now, no.
Okay. Any plans to work in the future?
Yes, I definitely want to. I'm still young and want to support, you know, be able to support my children and myself on my own. My family's been a huge support, and friends also. But I would like to be able to, you know, provide for myself and the kids. Sure.
Well, you worked for so many years. You know, you served our government, and so this has to be odd for you, huh? From going from having a career and then having your life turned upside down, really. Yes. I mean, the kids keep me very busy, but it's, you know, it's not the same. And my priority for right now is them. So as much as I want to work, right now I'm not ready, but also for them, I don't think it would be fair to say, you know, I have to leave and I can't, you know, do certain things for them or help them with certain things. Sure. Understandable, and that's great. There's such a big priority for you. I know that it was heartbreaking for you to have not been able to spend the time you wanted to spend with them when your case was pending. For anybody who's unfamiliar, you had limited visitation with your two children, but it certainly wasn't the same as living in the same house as them. What's it been like now getting back together as a family? And I feel very blessed. I tell them every day, we pray every night, and I tell them we thank God that we're together again. It's a blessing. Trying to make most of every moment. They're adjusting, me too, you know, getting back into full mom mode. And, you know, having to establish rules and things like that, because since it was part-time, I could be more fun with them and just play, you know. We would cook together and things like that. But, I mean, they're doing as well as can be expected, for sure. Sure, sure. They've had their lives turned upside down, and I think for a lot of people who watch the case and understand the evidence, they're very fortunate too. As you said, you all are very blessed that they weren't harmed. You know, there was a lot of violence in your house, and Do you ever look back and think, my gosh, how am I still standing here today?
Oh yes, most definitely. Myself and the children. And again, I thank God so much that we are safe. The kids are safe, no matter what problems they have to face, or still have to face for the rest of our life, that we're okay.
Jessica, you've seen a lot in your years of practice. When you look at this case, and you look at the abuse you know your client sustained, where does it kind of fall in terms of the severity in the cases you've seen, from most severe to least severe?
It's extremely severe. The other cases where I've seen where it would be more severe, we're dealing with the opposite. The victim of the abuse is now dead, and it's the abuser who's killed them. And that is one of the most important points that an expert would explain to a jury, or for me to try to understand in the case, is that the victim of repeat domestic violence does not believe they can leave. And people always say, well, they don't believe they can leave, but that's just not logical or reasonable, right? We always have that reasonable word. But not only is it reasonable, it's statistically accurate. It is an increasingly dangerous time for the victim of domestic violence when they leave. That is when they are more likely to be attacked and more likely to be killed by the abuser. And so this got as drastic as it could possibly get without her ending up being on the other side of the table.
And you provided the experts to support that, Dr. Michael Brannon, namely, and he gave testimony in the case that perhaps really tipped the scales for the members of the jury. We have a clip of Dr. Brannon. Let's take a look.
Did you diagnose Ms. Thompson with PTSD?
I did, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Did you find that she meets criteria for battered spouse syndrome?
I did, yes. Battered spouse syndrome is PTSD in an intimate partner situation, intimate partner violence. So just take what I just said and put it into a situation where someone's being abused. It could be a man towards a woman towards a man. It could be in a gay or lesbian relationship. Doesn't matter, but transfer post-traumatic stress disorder into an intimate partner situation.
And that wasn't the only time we got to see Dr. Michael Brannon. Jessica, as you know, he testified in Sarah Boone's trial. Her defense team seemed to take a big page out of your book, except they stopped a bit short in not having him evaluate Sarah Boone as he did evaluate your client, Marcia. I'm curious what you think about the comparison they tried to make with Sarah Boone battered spouse syndrome going on at the time that George Torres was killed.
So I think that they didn't have Dr. Brannon evaluate Sarah Boone because I don't think he would have opined in their favor. And I think that the jury probably picked up on them. So I would not have had him come in there. That would have been my recommendation. I don't think that Sarah Boone was acting in self-defense when she killed. Does that mean that she was not a battered person? Not at all. It appears from the evidence, from what I saw and I followed, that she was battered. She certainly was. She was the victim of domestic violence on more than one occasion. But she says that she was asleep, right? She fell asleep after he went to the suitcase. So you can't be acting in self-defense when you're asleep. And battered spouse itself is not a defense. It's an explanation to see if we can understand that somebody was acting in self-defense at a time where it might not seem to a regular person that they were. But given a history of abuse, it is reasonable. Sarah Boone was asleep.
Exactly, exactly. Whereas in Marcia's case, there was an imminent threat. Would you kind of remind us, please, Jessica, taking the jury through what was communicated to her and then how you were able to weave in the self-defense, affirmative defense with battered spouse syndrome? So on the evening or early morning of the shooting, they had been arguing, and it was extensive arguing. It started on the phone. He was driving home from out of town, and they were arguing for an hour, 2 hours. And the arguing is not just arguing, it's arguing with constant insult and name calling and threats of violence. And when he came home, she could tell, because of her hypervigilance, that she was going to be attacked that night. So hypervigilance is a way of a survival mechanism, really, right, that the
victims have. They can notice whether it's a look in the person's eye, whether it's a slight push, some sort of attitude or certain phrase that lets them know. And she knew. And the evening went on, and she tried to appease him, and she tried to rub his feet and tell him everything was okay, and anything he asked for, she did. But he was continuously threatening, saying, "I'm going to kill you. I might have said it before, but I didn't do it. But I'm going to do it today. Don't think I'm not going to do it just because I said I wouldn't do it before," right? And it goes on again and again and again, and he would not let up. And so the actual threats of killing her, combined with what she knew to be a situation where she was soon to be attacked in a very serious way. His violence had also escalated in about the year to year and a half leading up to this night, where he was being violent in front of other people and things like that. So he was really out of control.
Right. Marcia, did Terry ever have any signals for you in public, like something that would be known only to you, that would be imperceptible to anybody else, that he was upset about something and there would be a consequence at home?
Typically, it was a look. I try to really watch myself and surroundings, not to get into any situations, specifically with men, where it can be misconstrued. And sometimes he would pull me into the bathroom so he could privately tell me that he saw something or he suspected something. And then usually his body language.
It'd be a look, so something that other people wouldn't be concerned by, but you would know. It would be a look that you could recognize again and again, that created that hypervigilance that Jessica noted, that is part of the subset of PTSD, of battered spouse syndrome. Marcia, I'm curious, sometimes during our times of turmoil, those times can be our greatest teachers, right? Sometimes when we have the lowest points in our life, we can learn the most about ourselves. What would you say you learned about yourself going through this process?
I can do things a lot harder than I thought I could, for sure. Because there was times I did not think I could do what I needed to do, what I knew was coming up, that I am a survivor. And I have to embrace it. I'm working on it still, but I'm trying, to have more self-confidence, more self-worth. So that's probably the biggest things that I've learned.
Right. And you look beautiful in this purple blouse you're wearing today. Did you know that it happens to be the color for Domestic Violence Awareness? And it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So how perfect you wore this today with your attorney. Every good wish to you, Marcia, as you continue rebuilding and regaining everything that has been lost in your life since this horrific incident. We wish you and your kids the very best. Thank you for everything this morning. And thanks to Jessica Mashali. Through your trial, we got a wonderful new legal analyst here on our network. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.